Okay, hello and good afternoon for any of those of you who show up today. Welcome. If you watch this at a later date, also welcome. I received a few questions about how to do part of this lab. There's a little bit of confusion. So my hope is by doing this live stream, I can answer in a video form some of those most common questions. So throughout this, I am going to share my screen. My hope is that it will come across just clear. I am going to open, oops, I would like my video on. I would like to open my screen here so that, let's see, let's show my screen. And hopefully that is not an infinity mirror effect. So for the activity, you are referencing in your workbook. So if you have the printed version, that's fantastic. If not, you're using your own, printing it from here. We are doing this activity here, the Rocks and Minerals Lab Work Packet. For this, you should have been presented in our assignment on Canvas, a link to the Rocks and Minerals Lab. So here are the questions that correspond, not with that one, with this one. So you should see part one is minerals, and there is a mostly blank table here in your work packet. As you're going through, there was information on our module about Earth's materials in general, some supporting videos, which hopefully you watched, will give you a little background. A lot of those materials, rocks and minerals, you'll see in this activity. But when you scroll down to part one here in the activity, it talks about minerals a little bit more and how we identify them. And so identification happens by using physical properties. So when you hold the sample, you can do tests to the physical sample in your hands. Or if it's built in, in an outcrop, a big exposure of material, then you can still test it that way. So there is a website that I'd like you to access. So I have linked it here. It's highlighted in blue, the Mineral ID website. You'll want to proceed to this website. I've opened it here. And I suggest as you're doing this and before you start, you read through this page. This page will give you information about minerals and some of those physical properties that are used. Those physical properties are described here. These are those red texts in this first column. And then what that property means and how we test for it. Now, this is an online class, so I can't give you individual samples to test. I've tried it in the past and it didn't work well. So instead, we'll use this resource. As a supplemental guide, there is a flow chart, if you will. So a summary table of common minerals and their diagnostic physical properties. So I gave you an example in the packet here. I'd like you to look at mineral number one. Mineral number one is gypsum. Now, you could go to this process here, and you can just look for gypsum and record this information here. But that's just one piece of physical property, that it has a hardness of 2 and it can be scratched with a fingernail. I asked for 2 properties for gypsum, so you need to find another one. What is a useful property for you if you were presented with a sample? So we'll go to sample 1 by clicking the number at the bottom. That's how I got here. And this is an example of the mineral gypsum. Now you don't know this as you proceed later in the table, but I gave you this name so you can get started. Underneath the photo is a link for an additional image, which you can click that. It gives you an additional image, and then just go back. So how do you do these tests? Well, they have been done for you in a way such as a magnet test. If I click the magnet test, I'm prompted at the top of my screen. It may not show it to you in the screen share right now, but I get almost like an error message that pops up. It's a little black box and it says, the magnet is not attracted to the sample. I click OK, and I can record that. Gypsum is not magnetic. That's not a test I would use. We could do our streak test, and again, I click it and an error box pops up. But it's not an error, it's just an information box, and it says the powdered sample is white in color. So you would go through and record this information, and then you're going to complete the worksheet to see if you could identify this. Now, I've already told you this is gypsum. That's the deduction I have here. However, you might go through and determine that its color is clear and its streak was white. So I observed this. To me, this mineral looks clear. You might say it looks white, but the other image I looked at seemed like it was clear to me more than white. And our streak test said it was white. Its cleavage, we would need to do a cleavage test. So I would click that there, and I would continue through all of these properties. When I think I am ready, I click grade identification, and it will tell me which properties and or the mineral name I got incorrect. Meaning if it doesn't list it under you missed, and then a list of properties, you successfully identified and characterized both the name and the properties of that mineral. So that's what you're going to be doing through this whole table here in each of these mineral numbers, 1, 3, 4, 6. That is these first 3 columns of table 3.1. For the last column in 3.1, there's important mineral information. This requires you to do a little bit of investigation. So some of these might be straightforward. You may have heard it in the or read about it in your pre-activity module, but you might need to do a Google search or you might reference some other material like a textbook. But each of these minerals that I've specifically asked you to do, so I haven't asked you to identify all of them, they have a specific environmental concern or a relationship, since environmental science and environmental geology is how humans interact with their geologic environment and other processes. So for gypsum, it has a low hardness and it has 1 cleavage plane. And an economic use that I found in my research is that it is used in cement or used in wallboard, drywall. So that is an explanation. That's what you need to complete for the last column. Mineral number 3, I specifically ask you to investigate what's a hazard, an environmental hazard, if this mineral is mined. If it's mined, it's an ore mineral. Similar, most economic minerals are ore minerals. So for mineral 4, tell me how we could use this mineral economically. How does it produce money? These are the prompts for all of these minerals. So this requires a little extra work now that you've got your hang of completing the identification and the properties that were most useful to you in completing that. Okay, so hopefully that summarizes the minerals portion. And when you get to part 2 for rocks, you'll see that I've given you a link to rock samples. I didn't like all of the photos that were in the subsequent links, so in the igneous rock one, when you click a sample, say sample 1, I didn't like just this picture. You can get a close-up of it, but I wanted to give you another view of it. And that's where this slideshow came in. So when you go to igneous rocks, if you want another reference, here is another photo of sample 1. You'll know which sample it is. It falls under igneous, and the number of the sample is in the top left corner here. For sample 6 and for sample 10. These are 3 additional examples I gave you for sample 1, sample 3, oh, excuse me, not 3. I meant to say sample 6, and for sample 12. Is that 12 or 10? I don't remember now. Sample 10, I apologize, not sample 12. This one. So I just gave you additional photos. That's what the slideshow is. And just like you did with minerals, you can return to the introduction page here, read through how we use composition and texture to identify igneous rocks. And then you go to those rock samples, you deduct what the texture is based on your visual observations, and you determine what the composition is. So if I think this is intermediate in composition, and I think it is aphanitic or a fine-grained mineral-rich rock, then I would click both of those, and where those two intersect, the column and the row, that would be the name of my rock. I would hit grade identification, and it would tell me what I missed if I missed anything. Okay, so that's the overview for the igneous rocks. You'd repeat the process for sedimentary rocks and for metamorphic rocks. And when you look at your chart here, your activity, part 1, there's one for igneous rocks, and then there's some supplemental questions. Sedimentary rocks, some supplemental questions, and for metamorphic rocks. Lastly, there is a crossword puzzle. The clues are in the lab activity. This means that if you have done the part 2 component, so your rock identification, your rock names should give you a word bank. There are 2 exceptions. There are 2 answers that are not rocks that you previously identified. You might need to do a little digging around to see if you can find what those are by Googling or referring to other resources. But the goal is for you to be able to complete a crossword puzzle and find out a little bit more about economically and environmentally how we might be interested in each of these each of these rocks. So that's the overview for this week's lab activity. I hope this was helpful. And if you found it helpful, let me know so I know about doing this for additional ones in the future. You may have seen I posted one on topographic maps last week, and maybe I'll do one next week for our geologic maps activity. Have a great week and have fun learning about rocks and minerals.